Hello, welcome back. I'm going to talk to you today about the 5 instinctual steps that are involved in our stress response. If you didn't see my previous video where I talked about the difference between stress and trauma, go ahead and look at that first, and then today's steps will make a little bit more sense to you. Now, in preparing for this, if you've experienced any type of overwhelm, experiences that you are aware of or maybe are not aware of, there can be like visceral reactions to just hearing some of the things I'm going to talk about today. I am still kind of getting my heart rate slowed down and my stomach's a little bit back in order, just preparing for this. So it's very real, and I want to make sure this is a very safe space. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that you have some tools to orient yourself. And if for any reason you feel alarmed by this, please sign off, go away, and maybe come back to it later. But an orienting response, I want to make sure that you kind of want to look around the space. It might even be worth doing it right now before we start. Just kind of really look slowly, scan the area, make sure it feels safe. If you can zero in on something that, makes you happy or smile. I've got my Christmas tree. Just kind of really slowly look around. We're going to use that horizontal eye movement. Tell our body it's safe. If you feel activated as you're hearing this already, you might want to look around, look underneath things. We want to make sure our body feels really safe. That's something you can come back to if you feel activation. The other thing is push away. And this is something that it's actually become part of my daily routine. But just kind of hold your hands back. Whew, I got a breath right there. And then you're going to push, but you're going to push with all, like your muscles contracted as if you were pushing a boulder. Just push that out in front of you and just push. Make sure you keep breathing and just push until your hands are out in front of you. And then just take a minute. So if you get a deep breath, a yawn, sometimes a gurgle in your tummy, that's your nervous system settling. You can also do that out to the side. You can do it up, and you can also do it down. And quite frankly, I do all 4, just trying to keep my nervous system as calm as possible, and especially if you're coming into something that might be activating. So I'm going to talk to you about the 5 instinctual steps of the stress response system. The first one is the startle. Okay, so the startle response is when the body realizes there's threat, right? There's a surge of energy to meet the demand of the threat. This is a reflexive action, and it's important to understand that if we block that innate threat assessment, then the body concludes there's danger and it moves on to the next step. So what does that mean? I hear a loud noise. I look, and then rather than looking at the threat, I just crawl back underneath my covers or get back, and I don't look at the threat. I can even think of this when I was in burnout, where emails, like I would just see the name or see a message from a particular person on my phone, and it would just immediate startle response. So this is the first step. And in the first year of life, it's really important as to how the body ends up being wired to perceive threat. Because if there's ongoing startles and there's no completion of the stress response, then this can make it possible for a nervous system to be wired to perceive everything as a threat. You no longer see the world as a safe place. And I can tell you from experience that is not a fun way to live. But stress is the single action. It is the next step. We move on from the startle now to the stress response. There's a danger. We see a threat. Now stress response is going up. We've got this single goal right now is to overcome danger. There's a common myth that the stress response can become prolonged or chronic. But in fact, the stress response is short spurts. Think about the sprint. You got the pedal down, you're sprinting, but you can't stay with that pedal down in full throttle. So it is going to be what moves us into action, but it's short-lived. And then once the threat passes, we go back to homeostasis or back to balance. Now, if we haven't if we're in that stress response and the stress is building and building and building, then we hit what's called thwarted movement, or what Dr. Amy refers to in her Biology of Trauma book is the wall. And this is a pivotal moment that triggers our bodies shift into a different kind of protection. This goes from that high energy, that stress response, that high energy, and what renders us to a place that renders us powerless. We've hit the wall. Now we feel powerless. This triggers the first step of the trauma response. This is not, however, what creates the trauma, because what creates the trauma is the internal experience of feeling trapped, powerless, or this inescapable shock. Okay. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, you probably have heard of, The Body Keeps Score. He says that when we prevent people from moving, when something terrible has happened, that is what makes a trauma a trauma. We feel trapped, we feel powerless, we feel inescapable shock, and there's nothing we can do about it. You can think of an infant. My kids, we were taught to let them cry it out. Think about that little nervous system who doesn't even have the ability to downregulate at first. Screaming, screaming, screaming. Nobody's coming, nobody's coming, nobody's coming. The stress is building, building, building. It hits this line of overwhelm. And then we go into this place where we're going to hit the wall, shift into the first step of the trauma response, and then start to shut down. Now, there are invisible walls, right? That can happen, right? Negative beliefs. If those negative beliefs render us immovable, that can be just as bad as a physical barrier. If you think about a car accident, I'll give you a practical example when we're done. Something's coming at us too fast. We know we're headed towards something. We have no control over it. And we, hit something. There can be physical barriers that occur as a result of that particular incident, but there could also be beliefs. And I know after my accident, I was terrified to drive on the road again. And to this day, I'm terrified when the winter weather comes because it was on black ice that I wrecked and totaled my vehicle. So the point being is there's even negative beliefs and things can be just as powerful as physical barriers that keep us in a place where we feel like, we cannot move. Some of the common invisible walls can be childhood conditioning that anger isn't acceptable, isn't safe. You may have grown up in the tough love generation, right? Where you don't get angry, but when we block that ability, say for us to speak up in self-defense, this is what kind of starts this pattern. Helplessness, maybe watching a loved one suffer, could be abuse, could be illness, but if you had that feeling of helplessness, deeply held beliefs about not being good enough. So then you just think, well, why bother? These are some of the invisible walls, the invisible barriers that can happen as we move through these different responses. Can you remember a time in your life where, you felt like you were powerless? And if you've had, any experiences that were overwhelming and, there are many horrific things that can happen. I can feel my body responding right now as I'm even speaking about this. Notice any sensations and just get curious. For me right now, I can feel this instant-ish like tummy, almost like a flipping in my stomach. I can feel this pressure in my chest. And just get curious. We don't have to go into any kind of story, but just get curious, because if you have no memory of things or think you've never had trauma and you're having some type of response to this, then there could be stuff that, is just stored. Don't have to go into story. Just get curious and then just give your body some support. If you're feeling any of the sensations I mentioned, you can put a little bit of pressure across your tummy, a little pressure on your chest if you're feeling anything around your heart. Now, this particular step is the first step, as I mentioned, that changes the body's survival style. As we mentioned in the first video, when our stress is continued, it'll cross what we'll call a line of overwhelm, and we can't stop it, okay? Unlike the previous steps with the startle and the stress response, you had some options. You could have a resolution, return back to homeostasis or back to balance, or you had escalation. The stress is going to keep on going until it hits that wall, right? When you're in this particular state here, then when you've hit the wall, there is only one outcome, and that is escalation into the freeze response. And the freeze response is the first actual step in the trauma response. The freeze response, many people will mistake this stillness because you become very still, numb. Many mistake this for passive weakness. But it is actually the body's strongest survival mechanism, and it overpowers both the adrenaline-fueled energy, stress response, and the logical thinking. So the top part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, it goes offline at this point, and the freeze response has now overpowered that. But the beautiful thing is this is your body's wisdom. Its purpose is to stop movement and action that could now endanger you rather than help you. If you think of a spot where, you felt helpless, say, we're going to hit that wall now, we're in an accident. It's better to relax the body. And when I worked in the emergency room, I remember hearing this. It's better just to relax and surrender as opposed to stiffen up and then potentially cause more maybe fractures or different injuries. But this is how your body will shift its survival strategy from that heroic action. So you think about stress, adrenaline, when mom can pick up, a car that has the strength to pick up a vehicle. It switches from that heroic action into a strategic paralysis. Okay. Dr. Peter Levine describes this as how our muscles lock tightly. Think about bracing. It traps that energy from the stress response inside of our body. So we're literally scared stiff. We are frozen in a state of shock. And there are various experiences that can happen, but the common thread in any experience, any of these internal experiences, is the shock of the body when it realizes we are powerless and we are alone. Now, since the body can't stay in this state of this high shock indefinitely, and all that trapped energy has to lead somewhere. So it leads us to the final protective step, which is shutdown. The shutdown is the collapse. You will see even the posture people sometimes hunched over. If there's been a lot of this freeze response throughout life, shallow breathing, even frozen diaphragm. Like I know for years I could not, and still I don't love it. But when someone would say meditate or take a deep breath, I'd be like, yeah, no. Stillness feels dangerous and I can't take a deep breath. Well, there's a change physiologically when you go into this freeze response because literally all of the functions of your survival now are limited down to only those that need to keep you alive. That the shutdown will help us survive by engaging 3 different trauma survival mechanisms: disassociation, immobilization, and energy conservation. So you can think about it that numbed out, daydreamed, you just kind of like left your body. Immobilization, you feel frozen, right? You can't move. And then energy conservation, because now your mitochondria has been affected, so you're going to feel that energy is just going to drop. Now, since these survival functions are now blunted, then when our breath does return, it may be more slow or shallow or even irregular from coming out of that frozen state. We might feel disoriented, as if we've like completely lost our sense of safety. Think about times when you've been driving and you end up somewhere and you're like, I don't even know how I just got here. Like, I don't even remember driving, taking the road. That autonomic nervous system and the autonomic functions of the body, are just a beautiful way that gives our body wisdom. This body's sophisticated survival strategy, these steps that we just talked about, and understanding them can help you shift how you perceive various experiences. So for example, I'll give you this in a practical step. I was driving in the winter, it was early 2000s, driving to work, and next thing I know, my car starts fishtailing. I had hit black ice. And so my startle, I hit the black ice, the fishtail, I can still feel it to this day, that drop in my tummy, right? And the startle response. So now I'm starting to lose control of the car and my stress response kicks in. and that the high energy, the high adrenaline. I see a wall in front of me that I'm headed towards. Next, we go into thwarted movement. I become literally like I hit that wall. All the physiologic things happen. White knuckle the steering wheel, eyes widened, pulse, respiration started accelerating, and I started screaming, okay? Because now I'm headed towards the wall. I was in that state, and this happened probably in a matter of minutes, but it feels like a long time because time slows down when you end up in this shutdown phase. So the first step is in the trauma response is now the freeze response. I see I'm going to the wall and I can't stop this from happening. So I literally, not so smart, cover my eyes, and then my body goes into the shutdown as I make impact with, it actually hit a snowdrift, flipped my car around, and ended up underneath a garbage truck. And so my body had went through all of those. And then as I started to come out of that, because I didn't lose consciousness, I did go into freeze, because then when I started to come out, I just had a real groggy memory of the EMS people outside of my vehicle. If you had saw the vehicle, you would have never even believed someone could have survived. But the body slowly, is coming back. The breath is more shallow. And so with this example, we can see that these steps reveal that trauma isn't in the event, right? It's not in the event that happens. The trauma happens when we pass over that thwarted movement. I now know I'm trapped. I cannot get away from this. My body shifts into the freeze response, and it's that internal experience that is what makes it a trauma. One thing to remember is that we need to come out of the freeze via the same pathway that got us there. And that has been life-changing in dealing with different trauma in my life and uncovering other things that I wasn't aware of. Because when you're in the freeze state or you're in the shutdown, right? You're in shutdown. I burnt out a few years ago and got to see this head on, how dramatic and how devastating it can be. You have to start with safety first, because at that point, your body doesn't feel safe. It feels like the demand for this is way more than we can handle. We're going to die. So you have to start with giving your body a felt sense of safety again first. And there are various exercises, that orienting one I was telling you, the push away, grounding. Some people use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But those tools are the things that are going to you have to almost make it part of your daily routine to bring you back into a sense of safety. And once your body feels safe again, then we move into a place of support, because now we want to make sure as we come out of the freeze response, that stress response is going to be right there waiting. So when you come out, oftentimes your anxiety is heightened. So you want to be giving support to the body, and that's going to be dependent on where you have the different sensations in the body. And then once your body feels safe and supported, we move into expansion. We move into really looking at the thoughts, looking at parts work. I've used internal family systems. It's been life-changing. The fragmented part of us that's left behind as a result of various experiences, basically frozen in time. And that implicit memory has no bounds of time. It is a catalog of every experience that's ever happened in your life. And when there is something and a threat occurs, your nervous system scans the body. It scans basically that Rolodex of everything that happens. It compares what's happening right now to what happened then. And then you respond. And you can see now why sometimes what we perceive isn't always reality, because this can happen from a tragic accident, a tragic experience, can happen from, something as much as bullying, watching illness, loss of a parent. And then, of course, big things, war, abuse, neglect, all varying experiences, various levels of how people navigate it comes down to your unique biology as well, which is often a piece that's missed. This literally changes your biology. So we want to take all these things into account as we're looking at the stress response. The next video I'm going to do is how you track your nervous system so you can determine what state you're in and therefore what support you need. But I'd like to stop us right now with another exercise just to take a minute and just breathe as deeply as it feels comfortable for you. It's a nice slow breath. If it feels good to you, put your hand on your heart your tummy, wherever it feels good to you. Maybe take a look around so your body feels safe, supported. And thank you for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, where we're going to continue taking back our power. You have it in you. You are strong, and you can do this.